Okay, I guess we're doing this now, huh? Hi everyone, it's Kable here, and it's time for a review of this Eagles album, Hotel California. This is the 1976 studio album from one of music's biggest selling artists, well, the Eagles. To say that they've sold a bajillion albums across their career would be kind of an understatement. Their first greatest hits album that came out several months before Hotel California dropped would go on to become one of the best-selling albums of all time. To give you an idea of how big that compilation has sold, it has sold more copies in the US than fucking Michael Jackson's Thriller did in the US. How is that even possible? And even Hotel California here, we're going to see major sales as well. I believe this album is in the top 10 best-selling albums of all time, at the very least. Now, obviously, high sales figures would mean absolutely nothing in the long run if you don't have the songs that stand the test of time and continue to inspire generations to come. And this is where Eagles has kind of failed, in my opinion, because sure, you'll see plenty of music publications and older music heads hype up Eagles, especially Hotel California here. I mean, this album did land in Apple Music's top 100 best albums list thing that they did last year. However, outside of those major music publications and boomers, you'd be very hard-pressed to find people, younger people to be more specific, that would see Eagles to be anything more than just a mediocre to okay band at large. I guess another reason as to why Eagles has kind of faded away from everyone's conscience over time is that, well, the members come off as being very self-arrogant. It doesn't really feel like that their songs come from a genuine place a lot of the time. I mean, they probably do to some extent, but given how you can't seem to play a single second of their music on YouTube without getting said video taken down, yeah, they definitely feel rather greedy in their process. Remember when Frank Ocean did an interpolation of the title track off of Hotel California on his debut mixtape, and how Don Henley came out and called Frank Ocean a terrible artist? Yeah, that's just one example of the hostility that I feel is coming out of these guys. Hell, I wouldn't at all be surprised if this video gets taken down, even though I don't play any clips from the album, just because I'm talking shit about this group for the first couple of minutes. So, yeah, given what I just said, you're probably assuming that I don't really like the Eagles from a musical standpoint. And it's complicated. I feel like in some ways I am obligated to love the Eagles' hits, not just because I hear them out in the wild every once in a while and enjoy them, but also because their second greatest hits album was a mainstay of my childhood for a pretty good bit. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that compilation throughout those years. That being said, when it comes to their studio albums, I feel rather mixed on them. For example, about 2/5 of that second greatest hits album are from their final album of the 1970s and their final album before their ugly breakup, The Long Run. And while I do love the 4 songs of that album that appear on that compilation, those being the title track, I Can't Tell You Why, Heartache Tonight, and The Sad Cafe, the other songs feel lesser. I can get behind In the City and Those Shoes, the latter of which was sampled by the Beastie Boys, interestingly enough. The other songs are kind of bad, or in the case of the Greeks, Don't Want No Freaks, unreal levels of awfulness. Seriously, whose idea was it to put that song on the album? Thankfully, Hotel California doesn't have anything that abysmal in its track listing, but like The Long Run, I was only really able to click with the 4 songs that appeared on that greatest hits compilation at first. I was ultimately ready to write this album off as being not for me, and that the best songs on here were just a result of personal nostalgia, but then I saw something that made me start to think, and I ultimately decided to give the album another try. Now, I don't really want to spell out that anecdote just yet, so I'm going to get into the review proper by first talking about the 4 songs that I really love that are from that compilation, and then I'll talk about the remaining songs from there. We start the album with the title track, and out of all the songs on the album, or really in Eagles' discography in general, this one has probably stood the test of time the most. It definitely has this rather foreboding atmosphere in its main riff and the lyrics, which are vague and are still being discussed to this day as to what it actually means. The guitar solo at the end is also grade A stuff in my opinion. Yeah, you could make the argument that this song has been overplayed to absolute fucking death, but I honestly never really minded it too much. After that we get New Kid in Town, which is an overall more mellow number, at least when compared to the previous and upcoming songs, but it does have a pretty melody and a nice chorus, so I think it's another great song on the whole. The next song is more of a rocker called Life in the Fast Lane, and the song is admittedly kind of dumb sounding. I can definitely understand why someone would hate it, but alas, nostalgia trumps everything else for the most part, so I do love this song. The final song on Hotel California that also appears on that compilation that I keep referencing over and over again is track 6, Victim of Love, which I don't think was released as a single back in the day. I think it's just made that compilation because they needed a couple more songs, but I dig it, especially within the context of the album as a whole, which is not something I was expecting to say, to be honest. But yeah, those were the 4 songs off of Hotel California that I grew up with. So what about the other songs? Well, the first deep cut that appears on the album is Wasted Time, and I'm sorry to say this, but this song is kind of a snooze fest. It tries to be grand sounding, I guess, but the song itself is way too languid for my liking, and it just goes in one ear and out the other. Also, it gets a reprise at the start of side 2, which is like, seriously? I guess it does allow for Victim of Love to hit even harder, but yeah, that's not the worst song on the album though. That honor would easily go to Pretty Maids All in a Row, which is another super languid and boring song. It simultaneously feels like it goes on forever, and when it ends, it doesn't feel all that conclusive. Try and Love Again is an overall good song, but I honestly don't really have a whole lot to say about it. It's not the worst song on the album, but it's also not the best. Now, at this point in my listen, I was wondering again if this album truly was for me or not. But then we get the final song on here, The Last Resort. Now, in order to explain my feelings on this song, I need to address the elephant in the room. For all my life, I've grown up in northern Alabama, near Huntsville to be specific, and at one point in time, Huntsville was deemed as the greatest place to live in the United States, and I was like, okay, but why though? What makes that city more pleasant than, well, literally any other city in the country? It didn't really feel like Huntsville was this paradise, so to speak, and, well, as the years went by, more people started coming to Huntsville, and as a result, more apartments started popping all across the city, and these apartments just kept coming and coming and coming, and recently I saw this article that said that Huntsville is no longer the greatest place to live in the U.S. It's now like in 8th place or something like that. I don't remember, but there was this one quote from this random user who said something that caused me to think. They quoted one of the lyrics off of The Last Resort. I think it was the last line, which reads, "They call it paradise, I don't know why. You call someplace paradise, kiss it goodbye." You know, one of my favorite albums of all time is The Lonesome Crowded West by Modest Mouse. I bring this album up in a video talking about Hotel California of all things because its overall themes and concepts are kind of similar to that of The Last Resort. The Lonesome Crowded West came about because frontman Isaac Brock felt as though the natural beauty of his home city has been replaced by artificial crap, and that it no longer feels so special to him. I always relate to that ever since like around 2022 or so, because I felt as though I was in a similar position. And yes, even though Hotel California, this final song in particular, is a rather slow burn, it's over 7 minutes long and it doesn't have any of that cathartic energy that made The Lonesome Crowded West such a knockout album for me. Diving into the lyrical content of this song, it kind of hits a similar chord to that Modest Mouse album for me. Paradise is not permanent. Once a place is considered that, everyone tries to get to it and ends up ruining what makes it so special in the first place. You know? Really understanding and getting The Last Resort is what made me realize that Hotel California, despite its mediocre and forgettable tracks, does have merit beyond the songs that I grew up with. I do wish that this album was overall better. Like, the mediocre songs do pull this album away from being the masterpiece that so many publications like to claim it is, in my opinion. But I am glad that this album does exist. It'll most likely be forgotten over the course of the next several years until it shows up high on Rolling Stone's next top 500 albums of all time list. That'll make people confused and annoyed. I'm not saying this is an amazing album, and I doubt that many of y'all would even enjoy it, but if you haven't heard it yet and you're curious, then give it a try. I don't know, maybe this will do something for you, be it 1, 2, or maybe even all 9 tracks. I think I'll leave it at that for this video. Hopefully I'll get out of this boomer purgatory that I've trapped myself into as of late, but Until then, this is Kable, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.